Welcome to the next episode of the Austin Bar Association's Council of Firsts. I'm your host, Amanda Arriaga, First Latina Bar President. This podcast is made possible by the Texas Bar Foundation. Today we talk to the very impressive Bill Jones, who has celebrated a number of firsts himself. He's a graduate of Texas A&M University and received his law degree at Baylor. While at Texas A&M, he was a member of the Corps of Cadets, where he was named as Outstanding Freshman and served as a Ross volunteer, ultimately leading them as the 1st Brigade Commander. Bill was elected as the first African-American president of the Texas Young Lawyers Association in 1995. He has had experience as a lawyer both in the private and public sector. While he currently leads the Jones firm, he also worked at many other major law firms and served as general counsel for Governor Rick Perry. His heart for public service led him to many important positions such as Commissioner of the Parks and Wildlife Department, and he served his alma mater as the chair, and now chairman emeritus, of the Texas A&M University System Board of Regents. He founded and was the first president of the Texas African American History Memorial Foundation, which erected the first and only African American memorial on the state capitol grounds. Last year, he received the Distinguished Alumni Award from Texas A&M and previously received the Distinguished Lawyer Award from the Austin Bar Foundation. He's also been named as Baylor Young Lawyer of the Year and has been a Texas super lawyer for multiple years. I've had the privilege of knowing Bill since I was a law clerk under him at the office of Governor Rick Perry. I am pleased to introduce today Bill Jones. Thank you for being with us.
Thank you, Amanda, for having me.
Well, we start at the beginning, and we want to know your story. So we want to start with, why did you want to be a lawyer?
I think I wanted to be a lawyer because I saw lawyers reflected on television and movies. And I happened to have a cousin who lived about a mile from me in the rural near Caldwell, Texas, in Burleson County, who went to Georgetown Law School and became a lawyer practicing in Houston, Texas. And I felt led to the profession more than anything else. I felt that was my calling and pursued the career with some vigor.
And you've described yourself, even though you're a very fancy-looking man today, you started off as a country boy.
Absolutely country boy.
So from Caldwell, Texas, to Texas A&M, and then to Baylor, how did you know that that was the path that you wanted?
I'll be honest with you, I did not know exactly which path. I knew Texas A&M was where I wanted to go. It was close, and many of my friends were going there, and so it was sort of the thing to do. And this theme will probably come up more times today. My path, even starting at A&M, wasn't predetermined. I had no intent of joining the Corps of Cadets when I enrolled in Texas A&M. I made that decision the summer before my freshman year during orientation and had to come back and discuss it with my parents because we hadn't discussed that possibility beforehand. I didn't have a preconceived idea about going to Baylor Law School. I had heard of others and knew of other law schools, but after talking with lawyers who spent some time with me, I felt that Baylor was someplace I wanted to go and got in and didn't really apply to any other school. I guess I didn't have any of that predetermined. I just followed the doors that were open to me as I pursued my career.
Well, and it's interesting because to make a spontaneous decision to join the Corps actually probably took up the majority of your campus career. Because from what I understand about the Corps, being a fellow Aggie, you don't just jump in and out. It's not like Student Senate.
No, it was all-encompassing. What little time you weren't spending studying, you were preparing a uniform, or you were preparing knowledge about the Corps, the campus that you were required to do, or if you moved up to leadership position, you were required to do those things that were required for that leadership position. Or if you were a member of the Ross Volunteer Company, then you had to do the drills of the Ross Volunteer Company and be available for honored guests for things that they did. So, yeah, there was a lot to it, but it really did set the pace for the rest of my career. And by the way, as it turned out, the Corps of Cadets is one of the reasons I believe I got into Baylor Law School. Dean Angus McSwain was an Aggie class of 39 and came up to me during a law school conference at Texas A&M and asked me questions about my uniform and said, well, back in my day, that was a pretty big position, and asked me if I had any interest in Baylor Law School. So literally one thing led to another, which led to another, which led to another.
Mm-hmm.
So it's it's a theme that's going to come up quite a bit this morning.
Well, I would think that the discipline, the requirement to sit in the room and study helps with the good grades, because some people, you don't know if you're going to be good at college or if you're going to major in frat houses. At A&M, you could have majored in bonfire and not done much else for a semester. So I'm sure that discipline also helped to make sure you had the grades to get into Baylor Law School.
Well, it does. And I think more than anything else, whatever it is you do, if you are a undergraduate student watching this podcast and you're trying to figure out how to get into law school, I would tell you to spend more of your time focusing on what things you need to study and what things you need to do to prepare you for law school. Keep your enthusiasm and your passion for the law school career path, but you really have to allow the experience of college to guide and direct you, more so than picking up a particular path that someone else may have taken to get into law school. And so if you are a young lawyer trying to figure out how to make partner in your firm or to get moved up in your organization, whether with the county attorney's office or with a commercial organization, general counsel's office, focus on the things that become available to you that you can push out on and really show what you can do, more so than trying to put yourself in a particular path that someone else took to get there.
Well, and I don't know if this was the case when you were at A&M. When I was there, there was a fair that showed all the different organizations right before school started. And there were, at the time, over 800 student organizations you could choose from. And they had given advice, as a freshman, don't do more than 3 because you don't have time to do that in studying. And I'm a joiner and I like things, so I picked 10. And as I grew up in college, I narrowed them down and became more specialized in the things that I really like doing. But I also sort of went in a circle. I'm not sure that I started off wanting to be a lawyer. We were both business majors. But I still have a shirt that says Texas A&M Pre-Law Society, because that was one of the first 10 I joined. And then I went and did other things and then ultimately came back and said, I think maybe it's law school.
Well, and my path was slightly different. What I did is I focused on courses and activities that I thought would help me in law school. I took every English class that was available to me in the business degree program because I knew I needed to have a command of the language, both written and speaking. So I took, as an example, I took persuasive writing. I took a class called technical writing. And one of the first things I had to do in technical writing was describe a cigarette lighter such that if someone had never seen one, they could identify it based on your description. And those are the kind of classes that really helped me hone skills that I thought I would need in law school.
Mm-hmm. And then you were very successful in law school, won many awards, became a fancy attorney. And while you're a fancy attorney, you're now a grown-up, you become president of the Texas Young Lawyers Association, which is a huge organization that must take up much of your time. So how did you decide you wanted to be involved with TYLA?
I will tell you, the bar was always on the horizon for me. The cousin that I mentioned earlier that had gone to Georgetown Law School had me come to his office one day for a visit to show me what a law practice looked like. He showed me the library at the time and his offices, and then he gave me a stack of Texas Bar Journal to just take home and read at my leisure to see the kinds of things that lawyers do and lawyers deal with. So the bar organization was always on the horizon for me, even though I didn't really understand the details of what it did and what it was all about. I just knew it was something that all lawyers were required to join and to be a part of. And after I got into my practice a few years as a young lawyer, I decided, yeah, I want to participate in this organization at a higher level. And so I decided to run for district directorship in Houston, Texas. And there's an interesting story about that because when I made the decision to run for a district position in Houston, I got a phone call from a woman who was a young lawyer who encouraged me to apply for the minority position that had been set aside on the Texas Young Lawyers Association Board of Directors, and to run for that position instead of running as a director. And she explained to me that I should run for a Houston young lawyer position and then get some experience there and then run for a Texas young lawyer position. And I politely told her I didn't want to do it that way. I did not want the minority set-aside position. I wanted to run for a director position like everybody else, and I wanted to be a member of the Young Lawyer Association as a district director. And so I ran, and I won. And that started my bar career.
Well, and there's an interesting issue where there's these informal rules, like you need to have served in the local bar before you serve in the state bar, before you serve in the national bar. But at least for the young lawyers, at some point you age out.
Exactly.
So to me, it seems like people find their path in the organization they like, and they just do it. No one is supposed to call and say, it's not your turn. It's not your turn. Step aside, do it the right way. There's no right way. And there are so many organizations to be a part of. If you want to go and be in charge of it, go do it.
I agree. Look, I get rules for engagement, but if you feel, again, the passion to join an organization and to participate, particularly in the bar, you should do it. And don't let anyone talk you out of pursuing something that you feel will help you, but more importantly, in this case, help the profession. I felt I had a skill set. I felt I had a talent, and I certainly had the passion. So I went for it.
Well, I think that's great. There are some people who feel bound and think like, well, I'm probably supposed to do this next. I probably should do it. But if their heart's not in it, it's not fun. So if you're interested, you have a passion and a drive, go do it. I think that's a great message for the audience to hear.
Well, there was a second message in there for me personally, because I understood why there was, and I think still is, there are minority positions on the Texas Young Lawyers Association. I felt strongly that I didn't want that. That's nothing against anyone who takes a position on the board through a minority position, but they were established for a specific reason. They were established because for years, minorities were not welcomed in the Bar Association, only whites. And so the Texas Young Lawyers was one of the first organizations to open the door and say, we want to make sure you're clear. We want you to be involved. We want you to be comfortable coming to the meetings. We want you to be comfortable participating. And so we're going to create a position so that you will come in. And I get that. I do. I just feel like once that door is open for a minute, then you ought to participate like everybody else. And that's where I was. I didn't want a set-aside position. I wanted to compete with everybody else, same standard, same ground rules. And I felt very strongly about that and still do.
Mm-hmm. We'll talk about this a little bit later. Do you think that should still be minority set-asides now that we're a majority minority state? I'll let you answer that again without me talking over you.
I'm sorry I jumped in front of you there,
Sure.
But I'm pretty passionate about that. No. I went to law school with every race known to man, even a couple of folks from other countries. And they went to law school with me. I competed against them directly in moot court, mock trial, in grades, in the job market. um, it is different for me than it would have been for my father if my father were a lawyer. It would have been different for him. It would have been extremely difficult for him to do the things that I've had a chance to do. But I think that while we certainly can recognize past injustices, we have to reset the clock at some point and say everybody gets to compete on equal footing for the prize of the day. And it doesn't matter who you are and doesn't matter what you look like. And I do not believe we're in an area in our history, in our society history, and in our professional history, where we have to set aside positions on these boards for minorities to participate. That's just not, in my personal view, required now. Shouldn't be required now. The door has been open. We clearly have had minorities in leadership positions at all levels. So the word is out. And I'm passionate about let everyone participate like everybody else does.
So, after law school, you joined very fancy law firms that have since changed their name since you were part of them, so I won't name them all. But where I know you is when you jumped in to public service working for Governor Rick Perry as the general counsel. How did that come to be?
Again, completely unplanned. Um, I was with Liddell Sapp for 6 years. I think it is now known as Lord Bissell, excuse me. Um, and I started my own law firm as a 6-year lawyer with 2 other guys. And we did that for 10 years. And Governor Perry called me, Lieutenant Governor Perry called me to Austin to have a conversation for about 3 hours about what was happening in the then Bush-Gore presidential race. And the word was that it looked like President Bush was going to win and that Governor Perry, Lieutenant Governor Perry, was going to be governor. And he was, at this time, about 3 months before we knew the results, gathering up his staff so that when he took over as governor, he would have his staff ready to roll. So it took about 3 hours to convince me of this, but he said that he wanted me to come run his office like I ran my law firm. And he knew it was something completely outside of my realm of practice at that time. But he thought that I had the skill set and he wanted to expose me to a different form of practice. And that meant shutting down my interest in the law firm that I helped create. That meant moving my family from Houston to Austin. And most importantly, in the practice of law, it meant practicing a completely different kind of law than I had practiced for 16 years before that. For 16 years, I was a commercial civil litigator. I represented clients such as ExxonMobil and Burlington Northern Santa Fe and Chase Bank and other clients like that in the courtroom. And here I was asked to come be the general counsel for a governor of the state of Texas and administer the governor's business and review legislation and be the man on the phone during executions and advice on pardons and review contracts with the state. And this was a practice that I literally knew nothing about. And of course I said, yes, let's do this.
I think most people don't turn down such an offer.
Well, some do. I actually did. President Bush had called when Al Gonzalez was promoted to Supreme Court Justice. And I simply couldn't do it. I was at a point in my career and with my family, I literally couldn't do it. So I had to turn him down. A few years later, when Rick Perry called, I was able to do it. But you're right. It is not an opportunity you turn down, particularly when you're the governor's first. And I was Governor Perry's first general counsel. And that adds a whole nother level of opportunity that others don't get. And so You are right. I've been exposed to things in that practice that I would have never done in the private practice I had before.
Well, I think for people that have never been exposed to public service in that way, they should, because even though it's not a law firm, so I've never done the private sector stuff, but working at a governor's office on those issues of legislation and policy and contracts, you learn a lot. You
Let me
learn a
tell you.
lot. It's like a mini law firm.
Well, it is, and the law is what I call fast food law.
Hmm.
You get a question of law that comes in from the governor or the governor's staff, and you have to get him an answer uh, quickly, usually by the end of the day, and certainly by the end of Friday news day, so that they can have a response, which will definitely go public. And it's different than the private practice world. As I told folks at the time who will work for me, we have to be quick and we have to be right.
Hmm.
Um, if you're wrong, everybody in the state of Texas will know about it because all of the newspapers will write an article about how wrong we were.
Well, and it's funny, working at the governor's office was when I started to use Southwest Airlines because you could cancel without a penalty. And I knew definitely during session, you don't take vacation. But any time that a call comes up that you're the expert of, that is your job. It doesn't matter that it's Saturday, that is your job. And so we started to be trained. You will have the phone, you will answer the phone, and you will be right. You will be prepared so that by the time you get the call of the question you didn't expect, you can be right the first time.
Well, and when I started, and this dates me a little bit, we were issued pagers,
Hmm.
and you had to wear the pager at all times so that you could return the call that showed up on the little screen, no matter where you were, 24/7. That pager was attached to you. When cell phone technology obviously improved, then that became your leash.
Yes, I think by the time I had a full time job at the governor's office, there was still a pager for 1 year, and then we had Blackberries. And then the Blackberry never left you. And I got so good, I could talk to you and be texting on the Blackberry at the same time.
Oh,
So
yeah.
I miss buttons. iPhone, bring back buttons that I can touch so that I can do both at the same time.
I had completely forgotten about Blackberries,
Oh,
but
yeah.
yes, that was the next generation after the
Hmm.
pager was the Blackberry. I had forgotten about that. But yes, I had a governor's office Blackberry, which I thought we were at the top of the technology heap with those things.
Oh yeah, there was something called a pin message that was red. And if it was the red pin, it was secret. It was like the first version of encrypted. I think probably anyone could have gotten it.
Oh, yeah,
And it was still subject to open records request. But if you sent me a pin, I knew it was like extra special sensitive that I needed to
absolutely.
jump on.
Absolutely. That was par for the course at that time during that administration. But you're right. It's somewhat different than the private world because I think even in the private world, if you're a partner in a law firm or you have your own firm, to some extent you're on 24/7. The difference is if you don't do your job at the governor's office or any other state official, everybody knows about it the next day or the next week. If you don't satisfy your client because you've not been available or whatever, they'll just leave you and go to another lawyer who will service them better. But the stakes are just a little higher, a little different at the governor's office.
Well, it was interesting because I don't know if this was happening while you were still there, but the policy office also started to hire almost exclusively lawyers for the same reason that we need experts, and they were specialized in the certain subject matter expertise. So we would all become friends and want to go on vacation together. But if the health policy issue exploded, that person can't go. So it started, there was an interesting version of, there was sort of a healthy rivalry and a snobbiness of we have to have a lawyer because the lawyer, in theory, will be prepared for all the issues. I was a law clerk for you when I was in school, and then I was hired at 25. So what am I the expert in? Nothing. So that means the first day, the issue you assigned me, I will be the expert by tomorrow so that when I get the call, it is ready. And I think that's just a great training ground for anybody
It
that's starting
really
off.
is. It really is. And I will tell you, the lawyers that have gone through the governor's office that I know of have all done well. even after their time at the governor's office, because I do think you get a chance to immediately apply your talents and your skills that you took into law school and that you took from law school to put them to practice right away. And by the way, whatever it is you say in whatever position you take on that policy issue, that's the position of the governor. That's the position of the staff. And that's what we're going to press with. And that's what we're going to the Pink Building to talk to the legislators about. It's consequential. And that, I don't want to call it throwing you into the fire, but it kind of is throwing you into the fire at an early age.
Well, and having never practiced law in front of a judge, to me, the most similar thing was during the veto period, everybody is assigned a set of bills that they're watching. And then there becomes this meeting time where you need to decide, is the governor going to sign it, veto it, or file without signature? And to me, those debates were the most intense. That's where you knew, are you the expert or not? What are all of the reasons that we should do it? The political, the optics, the media, what is the answer? And I always found it to be like that was the badge of honor. If you wanted it vetoed or not vetoed, whatever your position was, if you won in that room, then you knew your stuff.
Absolutely. And those were great training ground meetings for young lawyers because it got brutal in there sometimes.
Oh, yes. So later, if you're going to have like a Senate confirmation hearing, you have already stood in front of some of the most important people in state government staring at you saying, I dare you to tell me the right answer. And so being able to do it there means that you can do it anywhere.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's a wonderful training ground.
Great.
It really is. It doesn't pay a lot, but you get a lot of good experience.
That's right. Well, and you'll get your rewards in the future or in heaven.
At some point.
At some point.
You don't do that unless you have a passion for it. And if you don't have a passion for it, if it's not a calling, I gave up a large sum of money to leave my firm to go to work for Governor Perry. I have not regretted it one day, not 1 minute of one day. I don't want to make it sound like a cliche that you don't do it for the money, but you really don't. You can't. It doesn't pay enough for you to do that kind of public service for the money. You have to do that because you feel led to do it. You feel like it is something that you have a calling for and you have the talent and skill to do. And it is literally a service to everyone else in the state of Texas or whatever group it is you're serving, the constituency. You are doing a service. It's very similar to military service. You do this because you have a passion for it and you're willing to put your foot on the line when the day comes to put your foot on the line to do that. And it's not about the money.
Mm-hmm. So as soon as you leave the governor's office, you go back to the private sector and you join the Board of Regents of Texas A&M. So what was that experience like?
Well, let me tell you what that experience was like by telling you what we did in our very first board meeting. It will give you a backdrop for the rest of my time serving the Board of Regents. I attended my very first board meeting in December of 2003. This was after 3 special sessions that Governor Perry called for redistricting. And House members went to Oklahoma, the senators went to New Mexico to avoid having the special session on redistricting, and we had to wait. So finally, when they got back into town, I left the governor's office, and he had previously appointed me to the Board of Regents. At that first board meeting, the president of Texas A&M University at that time was Bob Gates, former CIA director under George H.W. Bush, 41. And he asked the board to allow Texas A&M in December of 2003 to not consider race in the admissions of students. And he explained very clearly why. He wanted to, instead of using race as an admission factor, he wanted to do a holistic review of the student so that every student that got into Texas A&M, other than the top 10%, the top 10%, of course, are automatic admits, but he wanted every student that got into Texas A&M to know that they got in based on something that they brought to the table. It might be a country boy from West Texas who helped out his family on the ranch and raised steers for the fair show and rodeo, or a kid from Houston who helped his mom out by working at McDonald's to bring in extra cash, or some student from East Texas that participated in a number of activities in their high school. Uh, he wanted every student to know they got in based on a holistic review of who they were and not their race. And we voted unanimously to let him do that. And there was some, I won't say hesitation, but there was some concern, because that takes a great deal of trust, to trust a school to let all students that represents all of the state into their university. And it could have been taken as a way to exclude. But since 2003 until today, Texas A&M has not considered race. That's for 20 years. And I went to a graduation last weekend, and I got to look at all these students walk across the stage, and I got to sit there and know that every student that walked across that stage, and there were students of all colors, of all races, and from many nations, everyone got in based on what they brought to the table, not their race. And here we are at a time when the Supreme Court has made the decision that no university can do that if they receive federal funds, and universities are pulling their hair out and going into conniption fits, suggesting that they can't do it. Well, all they got to do is go to A&M and ask them what they've done for the last 20 years to pull it off. So that's a long way of answering your question. What it was like was, it was a labor of love, but it was a labor, because I caught a lot of grief during that time when we made that decision, from senators, from folks of influence who thought we had made the wrong decision. And I disagreed respectfully. I thought we'd made the right decision. And I think 20 years later, I'm born out to be right.
Well, and to your earlier point, it turns out we have talented people all over the state in all walks of life. So you don't necessarily need a niche for certain types of people.
The color of one's skin should not be a test. The amount of melanin you have in your skin should not be a test. It just shouldn't be. And look, I get it. I understand why that was done back in the day, similar to a discussion we had earlier about the Bar Association. There was a time when that was a test to exclude. And we have to move past that. Are we all the way there yet? I don't know. I don't think so. But we're certainly a long way from where we used to be. And we have to recognize that and allow systems and people to work to do things right, to give everyone an opportunity and not deny anyone an opportunity simply because of the amount of melanin they have in their skin, or to give someone a leg up simply because of the amount of melanin they have in their skin. It's where we want to be. It's where we all want to be. And so I say, let's get on to the business of doing admissions and opportunities and work. Let's do it that way and see how that works.
And so we talked about this when we met previously. This podcast is called The Counsel of Firsts, and we are celebrating folks that have sort of broken the barriers. But when we talk about you, you are a smart, ambitious, engaging, charming person that happens to not be white, who happened to have these different firsts with TYLA, with the governor's office, with the Board of Regents. So should we be celebrating these firsts?
It seems to be an odd thing to celebrate. And here's why. I should not have been the first African-American TYLA president. I should not have been the first chairman of the Board of Regents at Texas A&M. I'm not suggesting I wasn't qualified or didn't earn the right to be there. I'm saying I believe there were other people that came long before me who could have done what I did if they had had the opportunity. So when we celebrate the first, it's really more of a recognition of this should have happened a long time ago. I should not have been the first. I don't really want to celebrate that. The only thing I want to somewhat celebrate is to the extent others who look like me are also ambitious and smart and engaging and can get the job done. If they are encouraged to jump into the fray, to get into the game, to run for the office, to push out for the position, then great. That's great. But I just don't think I'm the first one that qualified to be Texas Young Lawyer Association president who happens to be African American. I don't think I'm the first to qualify to be Texas A&M chairman of the Board of Regents who happens to be African American. I have a brother who probably should have been, but he was high school class of 1960. And so that opportunity was not available to him. Had it been, he probably would have been the first African American chairman of the Board of Regents of Texas A&M. But he was told to go to Prairie View A&M because Texas A&M was not available to him. And yes, he was an animal science major and he wanted to be a veterinarian. So I think recognition is fine. I'm not fussing at the recognition. I'm just saying I'm not sure I'm wanting to celebrate that I'm the first because it should have happened long before me.
Mm-hmm. Maybe that's the hashtag we have for your episode is I should not have been the first.
Exactly.
You know, that's why this started actually, is that we learned last year in 2022 that I'm the first Hispanic female president of the Austin Bar, which seems very strange.
That is very strange. In 2000, wait, that was last year?
Yes, 2022.
2022.
Yes. And we've had 7 minorities. I'm the 8th. We had 14 women when I came along. And so it seems we're a large bar association. We have a ton of people that want to be in Austin. We have a huge diversity. Seems weird.
You think about that. Brown versus Board of Education was 1954. Civil Rights Act of 1964 and Civil Rights Act 1965. And it wasn't until 2022 that the first Hispanic female president of the Austin Bar happened. I mean, kudos for you for stepping up and stepping in and pushing out on a passion. But my goodness, you should not have been the first one. It should have happened long before 2022.
Well, and now that I know this, I have found out the Houston Bar Association just elected their first Latina president this year.
In 2023?
In 2023.
Wow.
Dallas got theirs in 2019. And so the 3 of us are doing a panel. And some of the theme is, wasn't it weird? We all just happen to be leadery, ambitious lady lawyers that are Latina. But strange that it took this long for the bar associations to have that.
And hopefully, here is what I hope to happen, and this is what I want to celebrate. Hopefully, because of you and what's happening in Houston and what had happened in Dallas, that there are other women who are in the same position you are who will say, wait a minute, that is something I can do. That is something I have an interest in. And yes, I do have a passion for that. And I didn't realize that it's okay. So if it does that, then great, let's celebrate. If we pull others in who may have felt left out in the past for whatever reason, some of the reasons may be legitimate and some of the reasons may not be so legitimate. But if we pull everyone in to these organizations, which you know are very important on so many fronts, there are so many layers of depth of what you accomplish for the bar and what you accomplish for your practice and for yourself when you are involved with an organization like this. So many people that you would not meet and have access to. Um, if we can pull more people into the table, into the meeting rooms, into the boardrooms because of their exposure to you, great. Yes, let's celebrate that.
What advice do you have for attorneys who want to follow in your footsteps?
Don't.
Well, someone's going to, even just on accident.
Here's what I would tell them. I don't know if you can follow in my footsteps, because if someone had sat with me as I was going through my school years at A&M, or going through my school years at Baylor, or going through my first years at Liddell Sapp, Zivley Hill, and Laboon years ago, and said, you are going to start your own law firm, which I would have denied. You are going to have a hugely successful practice, which I may have questioned, and you're going to work for a governor of the state of Texas and get exposure to all these people that you would never thought about meeting. I would say, I don't see that happening. I don't see how that can happen. I don't know enough people to make that happen. I'm a country boy from Caldwell, Texas. I grew up on my dad's ranch. We dug post holes, and we worked the hay fields, and we, worked the cattle, and we, repaired trucks and hay balers. We didn't hang out with the people that I now hang out with as a professional lawyer. So what I would tell them is, pursue that which you're passionate about. Pursue your passion. Pursue your calling. And a calling is something that you do with a passion. If you're not doing it with a passion, then it ain't your calling. That's not what you're supposed to do. And always leave the door open for something to happen that you didn't expect. Don't get tunnel vision about making partner, or don't get tunnel vision about being the general counsel of this, or being at the top of the heap of that. I'm not suggesting you don't have those kind of goals in mind. I'm saying leave room for things to happen and doors to open that you didn't plan on. And when they happen, consider whether or not they are your passion or your calling, and then push out on that. That's what I would tell them. Because if you try to do what I did, the way I did it, I wouldn't be able to tell you how to make that happen.
Well, and since you are open to whatever door is open, what's next for you?
I don't know. I will tell you, I think our country is going through an upheaval. If you read some of the books I read, it indicates that every 50 years our country goes through an upheaval like we're going through right now. I think there's gasoline poured on the streets. I think there's going to be a match to light that gasoline in the streets. And I think my calling is having something to do with that. I don't know what. I don't know in what capacity. I'm not predetermining what that is, but I do feel like that whatever gifts I have ought to be used to help guide, heal, or otherwise keep our country from imploding as we go through this evolution of time and upheaval. That's where I think it may lie.
Mm-hmm. Well, that would be a noble calling to be essentially the bomb squad for anything that's coming. And I wish you luck.
Well,
and I will help you however I can to stop the implosion.
I need to be heavily padded because
absolutely,
I think it's going to be. I think there are going to be trying times, and I'm not a negative person. You know me, Amanda. Mm-hmm. I'm a very positive person. Yes. I'm a glass half full person, but I smell the smoke in the air. I smell and sense and feel something that's unsettling in our country. And I mean more than the normal unsettling things that happen in our country. I think this is a deeply unsettling time And I feel like I will probably be called upon to do something in that regard.
Well, I can't wait to see what that is and for us to bring you back so that you can tell us what the solution is.
Well, I will be happy to come back and give you the solution. I'll even give you a sneak preview of the solution.
Oh, yeah, anytime.
All
As
right.
soon as you have it figured out, you are welcome to come back.
All right. Deal. I will do that.
Well, thank you, Bill, so much for being with us today. I think that people are going to love what you had to say. And we'll see y'all later. Thank you.
Thank you, Amanda.